What is going on, guys? Welcome to another weekly news video. I've got a few things to talk through today. I will be on a live stream a little bit later on, which is why it's going to be kept pretty light. But there's one topic in particular that I think is very important, not just for the hobby, but life in general. So we'll get to that in a sec. But I want to quickly apologize. There's a house down the street having a crazy party and they're blaring music. And I need to try and record this video as quickly as I can because that thing might be picked up by my mic. So I do apologize in advance. But we'll kick things off with a video that I put out earlier in the week, and it does in fact relate to athletes not signing their cards, and it's this one over here. So if you haven't seen it, please do check it out because I think it's really important to understand, because a lot of people are out there that don't quite know what goes on when it comes to athletes signing their cards. And what sort of happens in this video is that we've had a former athlete, a former prospect who never played in the majors for baseball, come out and said that his dad signed about 1,000 of his own cards, and that basically constitutes fraud. And some people sort of look at that news and try and break down how it could happen, and they put the blame on the likes of Topps and Panini, because these trading card manufacturers equally make mistakes in this space where stuff like this happens. But many don't understand the way it actually goes down, like I said, because trading card manufacturers don't always send representatives all over the country to site these signing sessions. And more often than not, use the player's agent, use a family friend, use a local card store in order to oversee the fact that the players sign those cards. And this one is just pretty interesting because the player would have had to have signed an affidavit, as the likes of Brian Gray from Leaf, the former CEO of Leaf, came out and said. So it's sort of like a watch this space kind of thing. I think somebody confirmed in the comments that maybe the statute of limitations has passed, but I still think it's worth keeping an eye on because stuff like this clearly has happened a lot. We've talked about it for Lionel Messi in that video. I forgot to mention the Dak Prescott auto pen controversy. There's the whole Babe Ruth situation over the years where his secretary signed a lot of his cards. Yes, a lot of athletes back then did that. Obviously there's many clear cut examples, but it's just one to keep an eye on, like I said, because cards are worth a heck of a lot more money these days than they were even 10 years ago. So if this kind of thing is still happening, we sort of need to be knowing about it, and we sort of need people to sort of see these videos and push back on these manufacturers to say, guys, okay, I can understand why you do it from a financial perspective because it can be quite expensive to fly your reps everywhere. But what you got going on here is not it. And one of the things that I forgot to mention in that video that a few people in the comments clarified was that a really simple way to try and fix this would be to have all sessions recorded and available to the general public to view, so you can make sure that the athlete themselves signed it. Yes, that opens a whole other can of worms from a privacy perspective and all that kind of thing. But you sort of like to think that as a collector, these businesses, especially with the cost of cards these days, are going to be doing the things they need to be doing in order to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen, right? There's too many mistakes that happen these days. There's too many things with these manufacturers dropping the ball. It's like, guys, we're paying you a lot of money. Treat us with the respect we deserve. But, it just comes down to the thing we always talk about. Unfortunately, collectors, and buyers in this hobby, investors, whatever you are, have shown that you want to keep buying stuff, even though they're giving you crap, even though they're dishing you out crap. So it's probably never going to change, but it's also good to call it out because, we can only hope, right? The next thing, just quickly, is this LeBron James rookie card, which was flagged by the likes of AIH Sports, who did a really good video on it. Because what has since come to light is, SGC graded this thing. They made some big, hoorah about the fact they did this thing, and then it came out pretty quickly from collectors that this card was patch swapped, and it's actually a pretty infamous patch swap that was first flagged by none other than Wax Museum Podcast all the way back in 2014, if I remember correctly, on the Blowout forums. And it's a really good one. So please do, check out Raul's video. The video is a really good one, I should say. But it just comes back to points we've discussed on this channel, over the last 3 years now, where you've got these trading card companies, and it doesn't matter which one it is, right? They basically look at a card like this, they grade it, they say it's authentic. Yet the people on the internet can see, within minutes, that the card was, patch swapped, altered, or something, right? Yet, these guys can have it in their hands, these companies can have it in their hands, and they've got research departments in place to look for these things, yet they can't spot it, right? They've had it in their hands, they grade it, they make a big hoorah, like I said, on their social media page saying, look at this rookie card we just graded, and then within minutes, people on the internet make them look stupid. Now, obviously the response from SGC here is quite good. We've talked about that in the past, but this shouldn't be used to cut them any slack, right? It's ridiculous that this, mistake was allowed to happen, in the first place. And it's just one of those things that we sort of need to, keep front of mind when these guys are making these mistakes. Now, the other thing very quickly to flag is that people basically said, well, the thing was patch swapped and they don't guarantee that a patch swap didn't occur, right? Or they don't guarantee the patch, right? They just guarantee the card. But you guys need to understand that a trading card rating company should still be checking and being able to tell whether something was, patch swapped or not, because that is constituted as altered, as it does, say over here, altered patch now. So this is the new label that's gone in place based on what, was brought to light by the likes of, Wax Museum Podcast and then all the other people that referred back to that, Blowout Forum. Now, I am rambling because, again, that noise from this party is very distracting, so I do apologize, but do check out AIH Sports video on these because it is very detailed and straight to the point. But it just comes back to what I've always said. These trading card companies and these graders do a really terrible job with a lot of things, and in particular these graders. It happens consistently, and especially with fake cards. We've seen it happen with a lot of Pokemon cards. They'll grade these things, and literally within minutes, the second the photo of that card is posted online, collectors are like, that's fake. So if you can sort of have people like me and you notice that stuff really quickly, why can't they have those same people working for them? So it makes you ask a few more questions, right? Why don't they have that in place? And is it because they don't care? Do they really not care to fix it? And I think that's probably, the answer. And again, I'm rambling, but we'll move on to the next topic because it relates to probably the most serious thing we've ever discussed on this channel. It relates to this total piece of shit. And there's many other words I don't want to be using right now, but we'll keep it at that. Who was essentially caught, by a decoy 14-year-old in basically a child predatory, ring. And it's something that is incredibly disgusting. You can see some of the DMs on this Cardboard Life's post right now. He's done a fantastic job covering this, as has, Sports Card Radio. And this individual was quite known within the sports card hobby, because you guys might be saying, Daniel, what are you doing talking about this? Because, it's not related to cards. Well, it is related to cards, as you can obviously see. Now, like I said, Sports Card Radio broke this Cardboard Life has covered it really well. I think I saw it, maybe the day before Sports Card Radio's video, because I think it was floating around on the internet, but I didn't, really know what was going on. I think Sports Card Cartel talked about it a little bit, but, it's just one of those ones that is incredibly disgusting and abhorrent, and this individual deserves literally everything coming to them and beyond that, because people like him deserve everything they're getting, basically, if you get the drift of what I'm trying to say. But the thing I want to talk to today is not so much the specifics of what went down. You can watch the Sports Card Radio video for that. What I want to talk to is what we as a hobby could be doing better to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen. Now, like I said, he was quite known within the hobby, per my understanding. He's been a dealer for a long time, per my understanding. And in the Sports Card Radio video, they talk about the fact that he was sort of promoted by some businesses in the past. I think the National Card Show had used some of his stuff in the past. I think they also said PSA had used some of their stuff in the past. But I want to talk about what we as a hobby could be doing better, because like I said, this guy was sort of like a wolf in sheep's clothing. He was hiding in plain sight. So, who knows whether this thing with the decoy was a one-off or he was doing some things at shows. And when you sort of look what goes down at shows, especially with our youth, it can be, quite scary to think about what someone like him could be doing, right, if they wanted to. And it just comes back to the things we've talked about in the past around, kids being photographed at shows without consent forms, people too quick to make an account and have that specifically be targeted towards children, and people be okay with that fact. It's just absolutely, wild to me, and things that we need to be pushing back on as a hobby. And, the immediate thing that you can think of or try and implement that you and I could do right now is that if you're sort of seeing a vlogger at a show or somebody filming a kid at the show, taking photos of a kid at the show, go up and just ask if they've, signed a consent form. Go up and ask if the kid's okay. Go up and try and find out and suss out the situation. Now, some of you guys might say, well, the hobby's fun. Yeah, it is fun. But as we've seen in this example, and like we've seen with some of these other stories going on in the world right now, people hide in plain sight, right? It could be your neighbor, it could be your best mate kind of thing. So little things like that are a barrier to entry to stop pieces of shit like this from getting away with doing the things they're doing. And even if it's not happening, right, it's still going to be a barrier to entry, right? It's going to make it that much harder for something to go down. But in terms of sort of like what you can expect more from, it's going to be, these large accounts like the likes of Jeff Wilson, like the likes of PSA and some of these card shows and all that kind of thing, because they have an opportunity and somewhat of an obligation to the community because of how big they are and how influential they are. They actually, force these, card shows to be doing more than what they're currently doing. Like when it comes to vetting your vendors and tracking IDs and all that kind of thing, or putting requirements in place that you can't actually film children, irrespective of whether a consent form's there or not. Stuff like that is sort of what you want to see implemented to make our communities, safer. And those people, they might not think they're in the detail on this sort of stuff, or they might not want to think about it. They might want to keep it out of sight, out of mind. But that's not okay, right? You've got an opportunity here. You've got a platform. Push back and say, well, this stuff is abhorrent. Call it out for what it is. Don't shy away from it. Don't be too scared to talk about it, and force meaningful change, within our hobby. Now, we spoke about these things, I want to say 4 or 5 months ago. It was off the back of some accusations from Hobby Shark towards, certain pages. And at the time, I thought it was, a bit strange in some of the accusations he was making. But the theme of what he was talking about was very important, which is why I, shared, his point and similar points to my Instagram story. We even spoke about it in a video, like I said. So it's one of those things that, people have raised for months now, but it wasn't taken seriously. And we've talked about Hobby Shark in the past. He can be a bit of a bulldozer with his opinions, right? He can sort of, put people off with how sort of hard he goes at certain issues and sort of some of the accusations that seem very much out there. And that's sort of why maybe people turn off to him sometimes. But, if people stopped and listened, they'd see that this was a thing that was talked about. So could some things have been in place earlier than what they currently are, right? Could we as a community have been talking about it a lot more, since back then? And, it's sort of, is what it is. People do things differently. People approach things differently. But, this is like a line in the sand moment, in my opinion, because you can say what you want or all you want about the hobby. It's fun. It's positive. This stuff doesn't happen. Well, this is just a reminder that this stuff does happen in life, and it does happen in our hobby. And you're really fucking stupid to think it's not happening to someone that's, very close to you. It's really unfortunate. It's really disgusting to think about. But you know what? We're going to talk about it and try and make our hobby better. So, in my opinion, I want you guys down in the comments to maybe try and brainstorm. What are some things we could be putting in place to call this stuff out? Like I said, I think we, as, viewers and participants at these shows, just if you keep your eyes open, basically, keep your eyes and ears open. If you see something, don't be afraid to go up and say, is this okay? Like, worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to tell you to fuck off, right? But it's just what, I don't know what else to say. It just seems a bit, silly to have to say to keep your eyes and ears open, but unfortunately it needs to be said. And, it goes back to like these card shows, like I said, it goes back to the big people like Jeff Wilson. He's got those connections with Michael Rubin at Fanatics. Like, have a conversation and put some things in place that tracks this sort of stuff at shows. And when I say this sort of stuff, I mean IDs of vendors. Force people to, use consent forms. Say you cannot take photographs of kids unless their parents consent to the situation, all that sort of stuff. Have maybe more security on hand. And, that's not me being an alarmist saying, well, this stuff is happening left, right, and center, so we need sort of the police involved at every single show and have like armed guards and all that kind of thing. It's like, no, but like, let's be sensible about the approach. But there's some things that we could be doing better that we're not doing right now. And when we're sort of talking about, growing the hobby and all that kind of thing, we want to make it sort of something that kids long-term want to be enjoying and want to be participating in. Well, the fastest way you can do that is to add more security measures in and around it, right? So their parents can feel comfortable sending their kids to shows and all that kind of thing. And you guys might say, well, Daniel, you're being a bit out there. You're being too, you might say you're making a mountain out of a molehill. It's like, well, you know what? If I am, I am. But I'd rather do that and try and get some change happening than not talk about it because I'm, naive and got my head in the sand. So, it sort of is what it is. Please share your thoughts down in the comments below. I've got a live stream like I opened the video, or like I mentioned in the opening of the video, with the Double Coverage Boys and Jay the Card Messiah. It's another roundtable. We're doing it earlier this time, so it's going to be a few hours after seeing this video. Usually it's like 12 to 14 hours because it's Australian evening, but we're doing it in the peak US time because we want to give some of you Yanks a bit of fun, see what Aussie banter is all about. So if you haven't seen one before, you're in for a treat, and if you have seen one before, you're also in for a treat. So come join the comments and join in on the fun because we're going to talk a lot of shit, going to have a lot of fun, and hope to see you all there. Cheers.